What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to cut straight to the chase here because we need to talk about what's shaping up to be a potentially historic winter storm that's going to impact millions of people from Oklahoma and Texas all the way through the Carolinas. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from, and I'll make sure to address your specific area and answer your questions in the next video. This is serious, this is imminent, and you need to be prepared. It's Wednesday evening, January 21st, 2026. And I've spent the entire day analyzing model data, tracking trends, and trying to answer one fundamental question. Are we definitely getting a winter storm? The answer is an unequivocal yes. Check mark. Mission accomplished. We are absolutely getting a major winter event. The question now shifts to something more nuanced and honestly more challenging to pin down. Is this going to be primarily a snowstorm or primarily an ice storm? The answer, and I hate to say this because it complicates things, is probably both. Let me paint the timeline for you first because understanding when this unfolds is critical for your planning. This whole thing kicks into gear Friday, really ramping up Friday night into Saturday. Many of you are going to wake up Saturday morning to snow and ice already on the ground. For the Carolinas specifically, this is going to be an absolute mess. A little bit of everything, and there's going to be a lot of everything. We're talking snow, sleet, freezing rain, potentially all occurring in the same location at different times throughout the event. Here's what makes this so dangerous and potentially historic. We're looking at the equivalent of nearly 4 inches of liquid precipitation moving in on top of Arctic air. Let me repeat that because it's critical. 4 inches of liquid. That's an enormous bucket of moisture. If this were all snow with a typical 10-to-1 ratio, we'd be talking about 40 inches of snow. Now that's not going to happen because some of this is going to fall as sleet, some as freezing rain, but you can see the magnitude of what we're dealing with. By the way, if you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, please leave them in the comments. I'll answer them individually as time allows. Also, if you like the video and subscribe to my channel, you'd be very grateful. Now, let's move on. This is also a long duration event. We're not talking about a quick-hitting system that moves through in 6 hours. This is likely going to last most of Saturday, Saturday night, all of Sunday, and some models, including the GFS, and to a large extent the European, are showing it continuing into Monday morning. That prolonged period of winter precipitation is what creates the potential for truly catastrophic accumulations, whether that's snow, ice, or more likely a combination of both. But here's what really concerns me beyond the storm itself. It's the high-pressure system that follows behind it. This massive Arctic high is going to lock in place and refuse to budge. What that means practically is that whatever ends up on the ground is going to stay on the ground for an extended period. We're not getting above freezing until likely the following Friday. Think about that. Nearly 5 days of sub-freezing temperatures in many locations, not marginal freezing either. We're talking hard freezes with some models showing single-digit temperatures. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know I shoot straight with you. I give you a transparent look at what the data shows. I call it like I see it without hype or exaggeration. So here's my assessment right now based on everything I'm seeing. This looks like a high-impact winter storm that's going to make travel anywhere from extremely difficult to outright impossible across multiple states. From Oklahoma and Texas through Tennessee, Kentucky, and all the way through the Carolinas, we're going to have major problems on the roadways. Could you technically get somewhere if you travel 5 miles per hour and don't make any hard turns? Maybe. Is that practical for most people? Absolutely not. The reality is, most of us are not going to want to be out on the roads, and honestly, most of us shouldn't be. This is the kind of event where you need to have your preparations done in advance and then hunker down and ride it out. Let me walk you through the European model first because it's my favorite tool for these situations. It handles the atmosphere really well in winter storm scenarios, and it's typically our most reliable guidance. The midday run today came in with some changes, some trends that we need to discuss. It shifted toward more ice and less snow in some locations compared to earlier runs. The GFS showed a similar trend, which gives me pause because when multiple models start agreeing on a shift, that shift is probably real. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish day by day with this forecast. Today, my goal was to confirm whether we're definitely getting a winter storm. Done. No question about it at this point. Tomorrow, Wednesday, my goal is to try to answer whether this is more of an ice event or more of a snow event. I don't know if I'll succeed in answering that definitively by Wednesday, but that's what I'm working toward. It might take until Wednesday night before we really know. The European model's midday run definitely went more toward ice than snow. It shifted the main snow axis up toward Indianapolis, Indiana, and Ohio. That northward track shift means a lot more ice showing up for Tennessee and North Carolina, whereas earlier runs showed significant snow for those areas. But I want to be clear about something. Just because the track shifted north doesn't mean you're not getting snow. I think many areas are going to see a lot of sleet and a lot of snow followed by a lot of ice. It's going to be a layered event with different precipitation types at different times. Let me show you something that really illustrates the magnitude of this system. If you look at the precipitation total on the European model, it shows 3.5 inches of liquid precipitation from Atlanta to Greenville along the I-85 corridor. That's our bucket of moisture. That's what we have to work with. Now remember, we typically multiply inches of rain by 10 to get snow totals, assuming it's all snow and conditions are favorable. So if you've got 3.5 inches of liquid and it was all snow, you'd be looking at 35 inches. That's obviously not going to happen, but let's work through the math. Maybe an inch of that liquid falls as sleet. Maybe another inch falls as freezing rain. You're still left with 1.5 inches of liquid, which could produce 15 inches of snow. We're probably not getting that either, but the answer is somewhere in this range. Does that make sense? The point is the moisture available is enormous, and whatever form it falls in, the accumulations are going to be significant. Let me walk you through the timeline in detail. Friday, during the day, this system is taking shape back toward Oklahoma and Texas. Friday night, it's really ramping up for northern Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, all of Tennessee, and all of Kentucky. When you wake up Saturday morning, there's already snow in western North Carolina. By Saturday afternoon around 4 o'clock, the upstate of South Carolina is starting to see it move in. Now, it may take some time. The European model suggests this might not really get going in some areas until Saturday evening. Other models I'm looking at show it arriving earlier Saturday morning. Either way, there's a window during the day on Saturday when things are going to start going downhill rapidly. It could take until late Saturday, but once it starts, it's not stopping. Saturday night, Sunday, Sunday night. And the European shows this lasting until Monday morning at 3 a.m. before it finally moves out. Here's what really caught my attention in the latest European run. If you look at what was showing 15+ inches of snow, almost a foot for North Carolina, that's been all but removed and replaced with significant ice. The latest run shows Charlotte potentially receiving 2 inches of ice. Think about what that means. That swath I mentioned of 3.5 inches of liquid, the model is showing 2.94 inches of that falling as freezing rain. Where's the other ½ inch? Sleet. So we're talking freezing rain, snow, and sleet right along the I-85 corridor with all of North Carolina potentially seeing an epic ice storm. Now here's something interesting to consider. The trend was way far north on the 18Z run. Does the next run go even farther north, or is that about as far as it goes? I tend to think we're probably near the limit. Here's why. You've got a serious high-pressure system backing up against the mountains. We know Arctic air is coming. That cold air damming setup is going to be intense, so I don't think we'll see a huge swing either way from here. The pattern is pretty locked in. The European ensemble, which averages together 51 different model runs to give us a probability-based forecast, shows 1.29 inches of ice on top of about 2 inches of snow for many areas. For the mountains, it's showing 3 to 6 inches of snow with about 1 inch of ice. Folks, that would be absolutely crippling to roads, to air travel, and to the power grid. We would lose power for an extended period with those kinds of ice accumulations. Now let's talk about the GFS model because it's coming in with a different solution. It's showing more snow, but also a tremendous amount of sleet. The orange you see on these maps represents sleet. This model is depicting what would essentially be an epic sleet storm. Think about the crushed ice setting on your refrigerator. Imagine throwing cups of that onto the road. It just sits there, and because each piece is an ice ball, it doesn't melt easily. It piles up like snow does, but then glazes over into an icy structure. Sleet is worse than snow in many ways, but better than freezing rain. The GFS shows sleet for several hours, changing over to freezing rain and ending with some snow. You get this layered effect, like an ice cream sandwich or an Oreo with different textures throughout. If you could cut through it vertically, you'd see the crusty, icy, snowy mixed layers settling in. You could practically become a geologist studying the stratigraphy of winter precipitation types. As far as totals are concerned, the GFS put out some absolutely crazy numbers today. If the GFS verifies, this would be an epic snowstorm that we'll tell our grandkids about. We're talking 23 inches for Asheville, 20 inches for Morganton, just absolutely monster totals across the mountains. Even if you cut those numbers in half to be conservative, you're still looking at over a foot of snow in the highest elevations, with substantial accumulations extending well into the Piedmont. The GFS also shows significant ice potential farther south, with an inch of ice showing up through northern Georgia and into Columbia. If I average together all the GFS ensemble members, it shows 5 to 10 inches of snow on the I-40 corridor and 2 to 4 inches on the I-85 corridor. That's a pretty solid consensus. The European this morning had some wild runs showing 4 to 5 inches as an average, with almost all ensemble members showing snow. But the 18Z run cut that down significantly, taking snow totals down and ice totals up. The GFS did something similar. Its 18Z run showed about 5 to 6 inches of snow for Greenville, whereas the 12Z run had close to 10 inches. Either way you slice it, we've got some impressive accumulation forecasts showing up on the models. Let me show you something from the earlier GFS run, just to illustrate how dramatic these solutions can be. The 12Z GFS was extremely cold. It was a very cold solution, with pretty much all snow. Are you sitting down? That run showed 18 inches of snow for Greenville, 10 for Asheville, 16 for Charlotte. That would be an epic, historic snow event. The kind where you hope everyone has enough milk and bread stocked up. The latest European 18Z shows hardly any snow because it depicts mostly ice. The 12Z showed a mixture. The European has been fairly consistent except for one run that showed 12 inches of snow for Greenville. So here's the trend, and I want to recap this for you in one clear statement. The models are unanimously telling me we're getting a major storm system. One model emphasizes major ice, another emphasizes major snow. At this point, it's not a question of if we get a winter storm. It's a question of what kind of winter storm we get. I'm going to know a lot more as we go into tomorrow. Here's something important you need to know about. The hurricane hunters are getting involved. They're going to fly a reconnaissance mission tomorrow to sample the atmosphere. They'll fly up and around the United States to get direct observations of how the trough is digging southward and what's happening with the overall pattern. We'll get that data ingested into the 12Z model run, and that's going to provide crucial information. Thank you for watching and see you next one.